What's up guys, Saf here on SuperSaf TV, and today we're going to be talking about the iPad Pro. A lot of you guys will know that I've had this pretty much since launch. This is the 12.9-inch version, and you may have seen my unboxing and other coverage that I did with this, but you may have also noticed that I didn't post a full review. Now, there was a few reasons for that. The main one being was that I didn't find myself using the iPad Pro as much as I thought I would. So yes, I'd use it a few times a week to consume media, watch movies, videos on YouTube, general browsing, and also sketching occasionally with the Apple Pencil, which I really like. But whenever I wanted to do anything serious, I kept finding myself going back to my laptop or desktop machine. And a lot of that was down to the limitations of iOS 12. It kept feeling to me like the iPad just had a stretched out version of the iPhone. And honestly speaking, I didn't really expect much to change. So I was working on my 6-month later review, and then we heard about iPadOS, and that did solve a lot of my frustrations that I had with the iPad Pro. And now, after installing the public beta, I find myself using it a lot more. And in this video, I'm going to be covering a lot of what I now like about the iPad, how I use it day to day, and what I still think needs to be improved. So firstly, I love that now we have icons much more closer together. It's utilizing that bigger display so much more. When you are in landscape mode, you can have widgets on here permanently, so you can have a quick glance at information. Previously, the app icons were so far spread out, it just seemed like such a waste of space. I still wish that I could customize icons and have them not part of this grid, just because I generally like to have a few things placed towards the bottom and maybe the widgets along the top, but that's just minor. It's such a big improvement, being able to utilize that space so much more. I also really like the updated multitasking, so being able to use 2 instances of the same app together. That's so useful. If I want to compare some notes between 2 different documents, for example, I can do that with ease, and I really do like that. And of course, the Files app. So when Apple initially announced that we're going to have USB Type-C on the iPad Pro, everybody was super excited. If you recall seeing my reactions video after the iPad Pro event, pretty much every YouTuber was very excited about USB Type-C. But then when we actually started using it and seeing how restrictive the Files app was definitely quite disappointing. However, now with iPadOS, I can plug in a Samsung T5 drive, I can plug in my SD card, and I can fully utilize the Files app, which is so much more intuitive and useful. And yes, a lot of these things are what we should have had straight away from the get-go, but of course we didn't have those, and I wasn't sure if we were going to get these things, but we now have them, and it makes the iPad Pro so much more useful. Another thing that I really like is the desktop class Safari browser. This makes my life so much easier. Whenever you're using a mobile web browser, you have to keep switching back to desktop view, and even that is not always the best. Now that we've got a very good desktop class browser, it just makes this so much easier to use and utilize that big display. Now, I'm still getting used to a lot of the new gestures. One of the ones that I do like, but I think still needs a little bit of work or more practice on my side, is copy and paste. You can use 3 fingers to kind of pick something up to copy and push down to paste. And when it works, it's really good. It works better when you've got more text. But for instance, when I've got a small piece of text, sometimes I'll find myself, accidentally pinching out rather than actually copying. That's probably more on my side. I need to kind of work more on that, but it's definitely quite intuitive. And we also have the smaller keyboard, which you can just pinch and then type just with one hand. It's more similar to a size that you've got an iPhone. Now, personally speaking, I do use the keyboard folio a lot more. That's just something that I find a lot more easy to use, especially if I'm, say, on a train or something and I'm going through lots of emails and I'm going to be doing a lot of typing. I do prefer having a physical keyboard. Now, if you don't get the keyboard folio case, there's lots of other ones out there. But personally speaking, I would definitely recommend, if you are somebody who does lots of typing, I write lots of scripts when I'm on the go, I do lots of emails, then having a physical keyboard definitely makes a difference rather than the digital one. Right, so those were some of the main improvements that really made me use the iPad Pro a lot more, but there was already lots that I did like about this. Firstly, starting with this beautiful display. I mean, it's so good. It's sharp, it's vibrant, the viewing angles are good, and 120 Hz refresh. It's so smooth. I absolutely love it. And the bezels, now that they're a lot smaller, it means that you can have this pretty large display in a very compact form factor. Now, I've seen a few people still say this online that, oh, why aren't the bezels like the iPhone super small? Well, these are the smallest bezels that you could possibly have on a tablet. And that's because unlike a smartphone, which you hold around the sides, a tablet, you are gonna need somewhere to kind of place your thumbs. Now, speaking of the design, I really do like this. It's very compact. It's so lightweight, which means I can just throw this in my bag and not have to worry about it weighing me down. And if I'm gonna be taking this instead of a laptop, which usually is around 2 kg plus, this is so much easier to carry around and it fits better in so many more places. The build is very premium on solid. We've got metal all around. I personally put on a D-brand skin because I like having a little bit more grip on the iPad. Also gives it a bit more protection on the back. If you want to pick one of these up, then I'll be leaving a link to our channel sponsor D-brand in the description below. And I have seen a few people kind of talk about the durability and if it's going to bend or anything like that. Now, I do understand the concern because you've got such a large and thin device here, but mine has been absolutely fine. I generally do have my keyboard folio case on this when I'm traveling, but I just kind of throw this into my bag. Sometimes when I'm on a plane, it's inside the compartment at the front with all the magazines. Sometimes it's like kind of stuck in the side of my seat if I've gone to sleep, and it's been absolutely fine. I have no problems in terms of durability. I don't think generally most people will have any problems in terms of this bending or anything like that. Now let's talk about the performance. One thing from the get-go that I have to say on the iPad Pro is that performance has been on point. This thing is so fast and smooth. Now, I am not a gamer by any means, and I don't generally game on my iPad Pro. I don't generally game at all. But whenever I have gamed on the iPad Pro, and whenever any of my friends have gamed on the iPad Pro, they've absolutely loved it. Performance is top notch. And that performance also translates into apps. I use Lightroom a lot to edit images, and I've got some very large RAW files, which I'm bringing in all the time, and performance has been absolutely fine. Now, a lot of other creators have been doing video editing. I've tried a bit of video editing on here. I've got Adobe Rush on here, but I only tend to use that when I am doing a short video for social, for example, for Twitter or Instagram. I've not really found myself using the iPad Pro to edit a full YouTube video. That's just something that I find better and more comfortable on a proper laptop or desktop that has a full-fledged version of something like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere Pro. I just prefer that full setup. I don't really want to kind of compromise or learn something new just for using that on an iPad. So video editing I still do on the desktop, but I'm sure if you are somebody who wants to do some video editing, there's lots of videos out there, and I think this is very capable of doing that. Now let's talk about one of my biggest problems with the iPad Pro, and that is around Photoshop. So when the announcement of the iPad Pro was there, they had this big demonstration of Photoshop, and I'm somebody who uses Photoshop every single day. You guys may see from my thumbnails and on my Instagram, I'm always doing lots of creative things. And I also use a Wacom Bamboo tablet. So that is a pen stylus, and that just gives me so much more precision. So the combination of having Adobe Photoshop, full-fledged Adobe Photoshop on the iPad Pro with this massive, beautiful display and the Apple Pencil was a dream come true for me. I was like, this is amazing. And then I waited for a few months and we had nothing. And I waited for a few more months and we still had nothing. And it's roughly been around 9 months since the official launch of the iPad Pro and the announcement of having Adobe Photoshop on the iPad Pro, and we still don't have anything. There was a sort of beta sign up a couple of months ago, I believe, but we still don't have a set date of when we're going to be getting Adobe Photoshop on the iPad Pro. And that's something that's just taken way too long. Apple, Adobe, please, I don't know what the problems are. Please sort them out and bring us Adobe Photoshop on the iPad Pro. Once that happens, then I will definitely be using this a lot more. That's because if I'm on the go and I want to edit a thumbnail or do some more heavy edits on an image, then I can do that all here on the iPad Pro without having to go on a laptop. I go to London often, so I'm there usually at least once or maybe twice a week because I'm based in Leicester. And before I'd have to take a laptop with me in my bag. Now I just put this in there and it's so much lighter and so much more convenient to have something like the iPad Pro, which I can then just pull out on the train, get through emails, do a few of these things. But if I had Adobe Photoshop on here, then I'd be using it a lot more. And I'd pretty much only need to go back onto my desktop machine if I was doing proper full-on video editing. Now, hopefully Adobe Photoshop is something that we will be getting soon, but you do have Sidecar now. So this is a new feature that's been introduced with iOS 13 and Mac OS Catalina. And this is where you're going to be able to use your iPad Pro as a second display. And you'll be able to control full-fledged desktop apps using your iPad Pro. So that includes Final Cut Pro, that includes Adobe Photoshop. But of course, you're limited to being within the area of your Mac. Now, I personally haven't installed Mac OS Catalina just because I don't like putting on a beta on something that I have to rely on. So I do use my MacBook Pro a lot. So I'll be installing that when the official final version is out, and I'll be testing out Sidecar a lot more. But that will open up a lot more possibilities for people who want to get a lot more out of their iPad Pro and who are in that Apple ecosystem. Now, just touching on a few more points before we conclude, there are still some apps which I find frustrating, like for instance, Instagram, which is still a mobile app that's being completely stretched and looks absolutely terrible on here. That's Instagram's fault. That's not Apple's fault. Instagram, please make an iPad app. Twitter's pretty decent, but once again, I do think there's a lot of wasted space towards the side. I think you could utilize it a lot better. Now, these are generally some minor things. Battery life on the iPad Pro has also been absolutely awesome. It gets me through the day absolutely fine. And the other thing that I really like is now that we've got USB Type-C, I can just have a power bank and top this up. Unlike if I was using a laptop, then I would need to find a power outlet. With this, I can just have a large power bank with me and I can charge this up whenever I need, and that's definitely a big positive. So guys, that is the iPad Pro. Now that we've got iPadOS, instead of using this a few times a week, which I was doing before, I am now using this pretty much every single day. And once we do have some more improvements and once we have Photoshop, then I think I'll be using this even more. And I think that's what the iPad Pro was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be a computer replacement for a lot of people, not a stretched out iPhone. And I think iPadOS really puts it towards that. Yes, there's going to be things that are going to be improving with time. Now, of course, this is the beta version, so there are still a few bugs and things which will be ironed out. But now I can definitely say that this has become part of my workflow process, and it's something that I use a lot more. Who is this for? If you're somebody like me who does do video editing and needs a desktop for that, but for pretty much everything else, this will be a very good addition. If you're somebody who doesn't do anything like video editing or just does some light video editing that you can do on here using something like Adobe Rush, then I think the iPad Pro may just be a complete replacement for you, especially if you're a creative and want to use the Apple Pencil. Once we've got Photoshop, if you're a photographer, then again, you don't necessarily need a full-fledged laptop or desktop. I think you're going to be able to do a lot of what you need to do using the iPad Pro. That's what I think of the iPad Pro. What do you guys think? Definitely drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, then do hit that thumbs up button for me. And if you haven't already, then be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss any further coverage. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on SuperSaf TV, and I'll see you next time. Yo, you just made it part of my iPad Pro video.